I think we're streaming, although I'm not 100% sure on that fact. Let's see. Let's see. Yes, we do appear to be streaming. Not sure if any notification came out. Top fans, I think we're live. Timestamps. Yes, wonderful. Gauge your audience. Whoa! Elf Hunter has gotten here. Okay, that's proof. We are actually live. Wonderful. I don't think I'll need these. The topic of today's live stream, which I really don't expect anyone to sit through the entire thing, you actually notifications turn on. My goodness, look at that, Elf Hunter. Amazing. I don't expect anyone to actually watch this. This is more of a posterity stream where in 10 years after this game is super famous, people can come back and look at this stream and they're like, wow, he was just telling people ideas straight from the well. It's amazing. Anyway, I'm doing this as pretty much an aid to me because I'm about 100 articles behind, right? I write articles on my phone. I get an idea and I put down a title and I come back to it later. Hopefully, usually the same day, but a lot of times I get back, oh, thank you. A lot of times I get back to it way too late. And so I'm like over a month behind on my articles. And so in order to get myself to sit down and focus and do it, I'm doing a live stream so that I can't escape. I can't get up and leave. I'm live. I have to do it, right? So this is just going to be, me just writing down ideas, just one after another, totally disconnected, random ideas from all over the place. And if that's interesting to you, you can just watch me have a total, not stream of consciousness, but just a total raw creation process. This is my raw ideas. This is what is refined and turned into other stuff later. This is the absolute raw. So that's what this is going to be. We start with the difficult one, called game layering. So I wrote this months ago, and it was actually from a previous notebook, and I wrote down game layering as an idea, and I don't remember what it is. And that's probably going to be a problem in the first, 50 of these, because it's been a month. But anyway, game layering. What in the world could game layering be? I think it's something like... And so I write these notes to myself, and I read back... I read them to my... I read them... Whew, wow, words. I read them again later. So, this is a note to me, directly to me. Maybe we meant something like having multiple games at once. And our definition of a game is having an objective and a set of rules. So we have the same set of rules, but we likely have different objectives at once. So a game like, adventuring and dungeon delving, clearing, getting treasure and whatnot. And then also another game like expanding your territory, two different objectives. That may have been what we meant by game layering, but I don't know why I wouldn't have called that objective layering, so I'm not quite sure, period. Anyway, keep this in mind for later, period. All right, that's one of my 100 articles down. I just have a lot of catching up to do. This live stream is literally just me catching up because I'm too lazy to do it on my own. I have to have people here holding me accountable, so that's why I'm here. It's amazing you're still here, Elf. All right, the next one is Maskell. A Maskell. The opening, it means a skillful or didactic poem or song. A skillful or didactic poem. This is a cool name for essentially a bardic spell. Instead of calling it a spell, because that's arcane, you can call it a Maskell. You cast your Maskell, or you sing your Maskell, period. Cool. Sing, not seen. Inspirations for Fantasy Ruins. This is going to be an extremely boring stream. This is literally self-accountability. But I'll try to engage as long as you're here. Relatable problem? Yes, thank you, sir. Relatable. Are you a world builder yourself, sir? I would love to hear about your world building. If you want to throw it in chat there, I want to hear anything you have. I used to have a series. It was like 3 videos or something where people would tell me their world building, and I would spruce it up. I would give them a bunch of ideas to make it better. Of course, in my opinion, better. To make it more fantastic, more out there, more true fantasy, right? That's what I mean by better. And I haven't done that in a while. If you want to just tell me anything about your world, we'll see if I can give some input. All right, both intelligent and non-intelligent mechs. It's cool to have mechs that you just get into. That's just literally a mech suit, but it's also cool to have something like Titans from Titanfall 2, best FPS ever, where it's actually intelligent and you form a relationship with it and you can jump out of it and it goes and acts on its own, period. We should have both, period. Our version of the Goodberry spell does not grant modest accommodations, modest food, it grants wretched or squalid, period. It's not a replacement for any and all food, which is a problem we fix by not being 5e, period. We need to rewrite the rules for advantage from a height to mean that you get advantage when you are at least half the distance that you are away from someone above them, period. Meaning, if you are 10 feet away, you have to be at least 5 feet above them in order to get advantage. If you're 30 feet away, you have to be at least 15 feet above them to get advantage, period. We need to clarify that, period. Wall of Stone can be dispelled by after fortresses. So anytime you build a Wall of Stone, you cast a Wall of Stone spell, it's, I've been watching some world building channels like Grungeon Master, and he's like, oh, we should have stone castles everywhere. You build Wall of Stone and you hold concentration for a minute and it's permanent, right? That's super cheap, way cheaper than building stone walls, right? Except anyone can walk up and dispel your wall and then your castle collapse. So it's actually a terrible idea. Wingstone is more than Starlight? Oh, I meant to say Wake Stone. We have this really cool thing called Wake Stone. We can't get into it now. Pentagram, low poly games are better. Okay, epithets hold narrative resonance. I come from 4D role-playing where we usually world build together in session. 4D role-player, good for you. Really cool. Crispy, Bacon, the late Shauner, very good. Saint Shauner, as they call him. Cool, Elf. I did not know you were a 4D role-player. See, the thing about world building together, it sounds good, and it is good to a certain extent. There's a certain amount of goodness to it, but in my opinion, I want the whole objective of the Arch game of what I'm going for here is for the players to have the same experience that their character is having. It is ultimate immersion, diegetic immersion, right? So if your character in the world is not world building, then why is the player also world building, right? There's a separation between your activity and their activity. Now, to a certain extent, it's okay because it happens before the actual gameplay, right? You are not playing your character yet. So, if it happens beforehand, then it's not really breaking immersion because you're not supposed to be immersed anyway. You don't have a character yet. So it's allowable to a certain extent. But then at the same time, it's hard to ignore the fact that when you are playing your character in the world, that oh yeah, I built that thing. Oh, and I designed that one, and my friend designed this one, right? To me, I wouldn't want to play in something like that because I just couldn't avoid the fact that I know that I partly built this, right? I want the world to be foreign, alien, unknown, etc. Because that's, like me as a player, I'm going into the world. My character is going into this world. I want my player experience and character experience to be aligned, and I think that doing too much of the GM's job, which is what I consider world building to be, beforehand, kind of cuts into that. Again, it's a cool thing, it's a useful thing if you want, it's just not what I'm going for. I'm going for absolute full immersion, no holds barred, everything else goes, immersion, right? That's what I'm going for. But yes, I absolutely know about 4D. I like 4D. Depending on your definition of 4D, I like it more or less, right? I think I'm more of a 3.5 or 3D. But by this definition, if 4D role-playing is you can essentially add minor things to the scene, then I'm pretty much against 4D. I'm more like 3.5, right? So an example I was given, I think this was by Crispy, or someone Crispy was talking to, by Tibble Runner Crispy, which I assume you know. An example was the GM says, there's a shipwreck on the beach, and so the player walks up and says, I go over and pick up a piece of driftwood. It's like, well, the GM never said there was a piece of driftwood, right? But you can kind of logically assume there would be because there's a shipwreck, right? I like to that's like writing the line. That's that 3.5. It's like, okay, that makes kind of sense, but I would still prefer the player say, I look around for driftwood, and then the GM says, yes, there's driftwood, right? I still don't want them to take that upon themselves, because I think that's when you're straining that membrane of immersion, and you're straining your immersion. I think it's better to stay fully in the mind of the character looking around rather than simply assuming. Now, there are some things to safely assume, right? If you're walking in a city and the GM describes cobbled streets and doors and windows, and you walk up and you open the door with the door handle. It's like, well, yeah, you can assume that's there, right? Same thing if the GM says there's a fully furnished table with all food and whatnot. It's like, and you say you walk up and pick up a fork. It's like, well, the GM said it was fully furnished. You can assume there's a fork. There's a certain amount of safety in that, but I don't think that's really 4D. I think true 4D role-playing is when you're adding things to the scene. When you're like, all right, I go to the window, I go to the door, I do this stuff that the GM never really said was there, and you're just adding to it. That I don't want. I don't like, I don't approve of, because the whole point is I want you to have the same experience as your character. Your character is not adding things to the world as he goes. He is only looking at what the world already has, right? So I want the player to have the exact same experience. I'm not adding a single thing to this world, only what the GM says, right? That's why I want them to be more safe than sorry, and I want them to look around for the window, look around for the driftwood, just to be safe. But of course not carried to the extreme of asking if you have silverware on the table. It's like, he said it was fully furnished, right? There's a balance there. I just prefer to stay more on the conservative side of immersion rather than allowing 4D. That's why I'm a 3 or 3.5D guy. I get what you're saying. Part of the session 0 is establishing the knowns and unknowns, but yeah, you could play a game where it's more the GM creating the world too. Yeah, cool. All right, back to my actual topic. It's always cool talking to viewers. It's one thing making a video, but I really, really, really like live streams. I wish I was popular enough to actually have... I find 4D to save time, but yeah, I got you. Who knows? I'm young. I have very little experience. I've only been doing, RPGs and stuff for like 4 years, so I may very well end up where you are, but for now, this is where I am. But I like it. I respect the position you're in. I think it's cool. There are a lot of old-timers, a lot of experienced veterans in the industry. There are a lot of experienced people like Crispy that I respect who are in the 4D camp, so that tells me I might end up there one day myself. But for now, I'm 3.5. All right. Epithets, hold narrative resonance. Epithets. Something like Alexander the Great or Richard the Lionheart, period. Having your epithet, your description, holds narrative resonance, narrative thrum, So if people call you that, then you might actually gain a constitution score bonus because you have a lion's heart, or you may have some advantage against being frightened and whatnot, period. Your actions can lead to the epithet, and the epithet can further boost the actions, period. This leads players to want to actually be proactive in the world and be famous, and actually hire a traveling bard or troubadour or whoever to follow them around and sing songs of their greatness, because it actually gives them narrative thrum, period. Thrum is the name for magic in the world. It's the energy in the world. Magic is the abuse of thrum, and resonance is the proper use of thrum. That's where magic and resonance come from. Everyone can resonate with thrum and use it, but mages abuse thrum and they get super powerful and they break things. Membranes and layers. Man, this was weeks ago. We were listening to Sleep Token, as we often do, and he mentioned membranes and layers, and I believe there was a visual on the screen, I forget which song this was, it almost looked like fascia on the screen, or at least at that part, or maybe in a different video, and it got us thinking about the world and how the world is made of not technically flesh, but it has blood and bones and membranes and whatnot, and so we shouldn't just have blood and bones and whatnot, we should have fascia and membranes and layers, and we already have the whole echo layers of the world and everything, we should absolutely have stuff like membranes and layers, which are really just borders and divisions, which we've already talked about, where it's important to have borders and divisions both horizontally and vertically in the world, so that you don't just walk everywhere, because if you can just walk anywhere and everywhere, then the world feels smaller. So you want to have borders and divisions like in Morrowind, where you always had mountains everywhere and you had to find little mountain passes and whatnot, because that makes the world feel larger if you have to actually, walk through a maze, period. So membranes and layers are totally a cool thing to do, period. You can almost look at trees and forests as fascia, because it is that slightly moving organic stuff that connects to the ground and connects to the sky. But if we actually have layers of I guess, hard air, if we have layers of force, or maybe even the sky plants, they might actually look like fascia. And so those are your layers of sky and layers of membranes over the earth, period. And then, of course, you have the arteries and veins that go out into the world and supplement the sky, or not supplement, it's nourish, I guess. Nourish the sky and the ocean and the ground and the bones in the ground that make the blood and shoot it out everywhere else. So you you definitely have all that, period. Man, the visuals are really oh you know what happens? You know what happens sometimes? What happens sometimes? You know why we have 73 of these notebooks, Elf? It's because we bloody our Samsung Notes can only hold 365,000 characters, something like that, and we fill it up. That's about 64,000 words. So and when it fills up, it just stops recording. So I looked down and saw that it hadn't been recording for who knows how long. Like I got some of what I just said, but probably not all of it. Definitely not all of it. So now I'm having to take stuff from one notebook and transfer it to another so that I have room to continue my article, which is, you know, that shows you how far behind I am, that I'm on an old article, an old, bloody old thing. Tumo breathing is cool. Yeah, bear with me for a second. It's gonna be a minute. 73. Resolution of description. That's a good one. Hopefully we'll get to that. 72. Man, I was writing down good stuff too. Stuff. 73. I would not be surprised at all if I looked up from this and there wasn't anyone watching anymore. Like I don't blame you at all. Oh my goodness. Oh, it's Bro. Bro is here as well. Almost. Dada Cust. Hello, Sadine. Hello, Elf. Cool. You're keeping my pals company. Thank you, moderator. Alright, freeform casting with fickle sovereign narrative. That's a really good one. Man, I hope I get to these. I've been wanting to live stream for so long. I've just been missing it, and I finally found an excuse to live stream. Oh, I was trying to say this earlier. I like making videos. They're really cool. But if I could pretty much just live stream, I probably would. Because I like to interact with people. That's what I enjoy the most. I want to have conversations. I want to talk. And, you know, live streaming and talking to the chat is one thing. I want to actually have conversations and talk to people about, you know, all this stuff. Because that's what I do. That's kind of my whole thing. If you haven't noticed, I like to talk. All right, the passage of time. There's a literal corridor in my world called the passage of time. Yeah, it's great. We have a couple of silly things in the world like that. Not many. It's mostly a serious world, but we have a couple. All right, we're gonna see if that's any better. We're gonna go back to 72. We're gonna try to find where we left off, and we're gonna try to continue where we left off. Okay, just walk everywhere because you can just walk. Yeah, not much. I didn't get much. Division, which we already talked about, where it's important to have borders and divisions both horizontally and vertically in the world so that you don't just walk everywhere, because if you can just walk everywhere and everywhere, then the world feels small, so you want to have it like Morrowind. No, not directly world building, Zarian. I'm very behind on all of my notes. I'm about 100 articles behind on my notes that I make to myself. I just jot down ideas, and in the last month or so, I've been so busy that I would just jot down the title, and I'd say, I'll get back to it later. And now I'm 100 titles behind, and now I need to go and flesh out each of them. So if you stay, you get to hear me talking about random things in my world, from game design to world building to anything at all. These are my raw core ideas. And this might be entertaining for people in 10 years to come back and look and be like, wow, those were his raw ideas before they were polished into, other things. It might not be very interesting now, but this is more just me making a stream to have accountability so I can actually sit down and focus, because otherwise I'm too lazy. I'll just go do other things and play a video game, and I need to have people here to be like, hey, stay focused, right? It's body doubling, if you know what that is. I'm leveraging you all to body double. All right, small, and you want to have a small like Morrowind, where you had a bunch of mountains and whatnot, period. All right, increase race HP through better diet. So when you eat a better diet, meaning you have probably at least comfortable, if not better, accommodations throughout the year, then you get to increase your race HD, which means if you rolled all 4s and whatnot, then you get to take one of those and turn it into a 5 and a 6 and a 7 and 8, and you get to keep going through all the rest of them, period. You can do this easily by just saying you spend that 4th season of each year of your life, when it comes to character creation, doing more work, and that work went directly toward buying better food. So you can essentially just spend a season to upgrade your HP as normal, but you can also just have better food and upgrade your HP when you just have more money, period. All right, like a bird in flight, so causeless curse does not alight, nor baseless blessing. This just means that you have to have an actual reason to curse or bless someone, and you can't just give people blessings or curses for no good reason. It won't actually land, period. All avatars are tied to the stars. Man, I don't remember what this one's about. All avatars are tied to the stars. Oh, hey, while y'all are here, all 3 of you, wonderful. Question. So, don't know if you noticed, but I'm working on the name of my game. Currently, or rather previously, it was Arches and Avatars, okay? It is not going to be Arches and Avatars anymore. We've been considering things like Bloods of Ichniro, because Ichniro is the name of the Waking World. The material plane, in our game it's called the Waking World, also called Ichniro, right? Combination of 2 Greek words. So anyway, we have, the Waking World, the Waking Dream, which is Ichniro, and so we thought, ooh, Bloods of Ichniro, it's edgy, it's cool, the different Bloods of Ichniro are the different races of Ichniro, the races of the Waking World, which are the people that you play as. So it's essentially saying, hey, this, you get to play as the different Bloods of the Waking World, the different races and whatnot. So I thought it was a cool, flavorful thing, but Bloods of Ichniro might be replaced by something else. So, Bloods of Nero is one. The other one I've been thinking about is more similar to the existing name. The existing name is Arches and Avatars, but I've decided that seriously, like, what is happening? Anyway, sorry. The whole reason why we're changing from Arches and Avatars is because we got a lot of critique at our last convention, and people were saying, we don't know what it's about. Is it fantasy? Is it sci-fi? Like, what is Arches and Avatars, right? They didn't know. One guy even said, is this a game about architecture? Like, arches? So, like, okay, really, like, I need to change the name. Like, Bloods of Ichniro, that sounds more fantasy, right? Well, we're considering going back to arches, including it, because we just can't get away from it. In the game, you have your different, like, the arches are the things that give you your class. The elemental arches are the things that give you your elemental adherence. We have dragon arches. The game master is called the Archmaster when you run the game. That's why I have the title of the Archmaster on the YouTube channel. It's because you're the GM of Arches and Avatars, right? So I don't want to get rid of the title of Archmaster. I can't get rid of the arches in the game. It's all very important. So I still want to include arches. So where I am now, the new name that I'm contemplating, that I only came up with like yesterday or the day before, that I just want to get feedback on from the 3 of you, is, well, sorry, one more tangent. We previously wanted to have the brand name. The brand is Apsildon, right? That is our version of Star Wars, right? So Star Wars, The Phantom Menace, right? Star Wars is your brand, The Phantom Menace is the specific product, right? We wanted to have Apsildon, Bloods of Ichniro, or Apsildon, Arches and Avatars, right? Arches and Avatars is the game itself, Apsildon is the brand, right? But that's not totally necessary. You don't absolutely have to have the brand first, especially in the first product. a lot of first products take the brand and put it as they incorporate it into the title somehow. So this is where we are. What about Arches of Apsildon? How does that sound? It sounds silly coming out of my mouth, but that's just because I've been thinking about this forever, right? So it could be Apsildon Bloods of Ichnaro or Arches of Apsildon, right? Because if every single product just has Apsildon as the brand, and then there's the product name, then you don't really necessarily know which product is first, because they all just have Apsildon, this and that. But if you have Arches of Apsildon, that tells you, oh, this is the first product. This is the one that introduced Apsildon. Before, it was just a brand above the rest, right? But it also connects, you have the word Apsildon, which is very unique. It's very recognizable. Any other game that I have afterward that says Apsildon Bloods of Ichnaro, Apsildon, Valley of Bones, etc., any other thing that I put after there that I include Apsildon at the top, they know that it came from the original tabletop game, Arches of Apsildon, right? So just something I'm thinking of it. And it's just an idea. I'm thinking. Have not been able to settle on Bloods of Ichnaro. I like it. It's a cool name, but it sounds more like the name for a supplemental book about all the different races. Bloods of Ichnaro, right? It doesn't necessarily sound like the game, like the original tabletop game by Architrave Gaming. It's cool. I really like it. Great for a video game, perhaps, right? It's a good name, but I'm just not sure about the name. Right? Arches of Apsildon still has arches in there, and Archmaster. It still connects a lot of things, and it takes the brand in there, but it also shortens it. Instead of Apsildon, Arches, and Avatars, you just shorten all that, and it's one. So that might also be a little better to shorten it a bit. One thing I wanted to avoid was alliteration, where you have, Dungeons and Dragons, Arches, and Avatars, right? Where you have the same letter twice, but I don't necessarily need to avoid that, right? Some people critique it and they don't like it, but it's not actually a problem. We just had Vaults of Varn, which is, a setting that just came out that's really cool. I don't think people decide not to buy something because it has two letters in a row, right? I think it makes it memorable, actually. It's easier to remember Vaults of Varn or Arches and Avatars than to remember, Forbidden Lands, right? It helps you remember it. That's why people use it. Would you say Architrave Gaming is the name of your role-playing gaming model? Sorry, didn't mean to make you explain it all. Yeah, no, you're good. So Architrave Gaming is the name of the company, right? Ghostfire Gaming, Wizards of the Coast, Bethesda Game Studios. This is mine. It's Architrave Gaming. It is, the Architrave is actually part of the gaming model and whatnot. So there's, your gaming model first, and the company is named after the gaming model, but they are technically separate. Architrave Gaming is the company. The tabletop company. One day, when we make video games, Lord willing, we'll have a different one. It'll be called Architrave Studios or Entertainment or whatever. So the Arch game, I know we have a lot of arches everywhere. The Arch game is the activity, right? So the activity you engage in at the table. The activity is, all right, so what is a game? A game is the voluntary undertaking of unnecessary actions, tasks, unnecessary challenges, the voluntary undertaking of unnecessary challenges, right? It's not a game to go to work because you have to do it. It is a game to throw the football around because you don't have to do it, right? It's a challenge, but it's unnecessary, right? The voluntary undertaking of unnecessary challenges, that is a game. So what is the Arch game? It is what is the challenge? What is the unnecessary challenge of the Arch game? It is very challenging. It is a very hard game. It is trying to combine perfect verisimilitude where the world feels real with perfect gameplay and challenge of, the actual rolling the dice and the challenge of the monsters. Combine that with perfect character and player integration, being friends with the player, and drama. Combine that, the fourth quadrant, with perfect immersion in the character, role-playing the portrait of your soul. Perfect role-play. It's saying, we want the world to feel real, the challenge to be great, the characters to be, emotional investment in the characters, and all of it role-played. Try to do all four of those at the same time for 4 hours straight, right? That is pretty hard. That is an unnecessary challenge. That is the Arch game, right? That results, if you can achieve that, that results in what I call the Arch dream. That's the most fun you can have with your brain. If you can do all four of those all four of those together, you are in this ultimate dream world of I'm totally in a real world that's really engaging. I'm in the flow state because the challenges are hard, and I have this emotional investment in the characters and the players at the table, and I'm role-playing inside my character's head, and I feel like I'm here in this totally real world, feeling these real challenges myself, right? That's awesome. That is the most fun you can have with your brain. That is a rewarding experience. It goes beyond fun. That is rewarding. That is transcendent, right? That's the Arch game. That's what we're going for. That's the Arch dream. The Arch dream is achieved through the Arch game, right? And then, a specific game book and a specific setting book, which I may have later. Those are just tools to play the Arch game, right? This is not the Arch game. This is just a tabletop adventure game. You use this to play the Arch game. Anyway, thank you. I love interactions and comments. Thank you. I really, really, really appreciate it. This is what gets me going. Also, 7 viewers, a lot more than I thought I'd get. Everyone in the comments, say hi. Come on, introduce yourself. I'd love to know who's here. All right, next idea. All avatars are tied to the stars. Because the stars are conduits to the plane of thought, and each star... Oh, we do use transcendence. It's actually on the front cover. It's part of the subtitle of Seven, you're funny. Sorry, it's part of the subtitle of the Game Master's book. Transcendence is on there. Because the stars are conduits to the plane of thought. 1-800 number? No. And each star is representative of a thought, that means when you have an avatar that becomes the ultimate embodiment of a concept, that is inexplicably tied to the stars, which means you probably have stars and constellations for every single avatar that has ever existed and currently does exist, and the ones that currently do exist are probably brighter or larger, or the ones that have existed maybe move to a different part in the night sky, but anyway, the whole point of being an avatar is you fully embody the concept and make it real, and all the concepts are manifested in the stars, so that means all avatars are tied to the stars, which means ideal avatars who are tied to the big virtue stars are big special avatars, but you can totally have an avatar tied to any constellation or any stars or any concept. You can have an avatar of each race, because each race is a concept, or each race is a representation of a concept, and that concept has a constellation. So there are racial constellations for every nation, constellations for all types of magic, constellations for every idea. Well, either it's a constellation or an individual star. So, yeah, every single avatar is tied to the star somehow, period. All right. Prejudice. Wonderful. We have some really cool world building in here, if we do say so ourselves. The Lord is very generous. And we are going to do some more transferring, which the rest of them know about. We are going to grab this and transfer it to another notebook to make room, because we are running out of room again. Thirdly, 72. This is like a two minute break while I transfer everything over, because my notebook can only carry so many words, so I have to make room in it. 73. We have 73 notebooks. Do you realize how many that is? Yes, it's one more than 72, but that's not the point. The point is, each notebook has about 64,000 words, and we have 72 notebooks. We're on our 73rd, okay? Someone do the math. What's 72 times, what the heck? What's 72 times 64,000? Someone come up with that. I will answer your question just a second, Zarian. I am super focused, as you can tell. I am not distracted easily at all. I'm sure everyone can attest to that when watching my live streams, even watching my videos. All right. To answer your question, Zarian, elevator pitch, that's a good question. Yeah, a lot. What's the elevator pitch for the setting and main gameplay loop? Okay, cool. I have opinions on gameplay loop. I think the term gameplay loop is fit for video games. It's not fit for tabletop. That is a video game question. That is a video game mindset, right? The whole beauty of tabletop is that you can do whatever you want. It's totally free and open. I say it is the player's job to come up with their own gameplay loop, all right? Here's why. You can have a setting, right? In my opinion, everything I'm about to say is my opinion on the best practices for the Arch game, for my game, for Architrave gaming, etc., right? So I'm not telling you you're doing it wrong if you're playing an RPG. I'm not playing an RPG. This is not an RPG. I'm playing the Arch game, right? So I get to make my own rules because I have my own vocabulary, my own ideas for what this is, okay? So in the Arch game, right, the most fun you can have with your brain, the GM, or, you know, a publisher like me, makes a setting. The GM makes a setting, right? So you have your good kingdom and your evil, you know, outlands, and you have your plains, and you have the treasure in the ancient dungeons underneath the ground, and you have all the different warring baronies and whatnot. There's a whole powder keg setting, the world full of potential, right? The players are put down in there. The players can decide, I want to go dungeon delve. I want treasure, right? This is my personal objective. I want to be a treasure hunter, right? So the players get to decide their own gameplay loop. I'm going to go down into a dungeon. Well, first I'll do some preparation. I'll buy some equipment. I'll go down into a dungeon. I'll spend a week down there killing monsters, gathering treasure, and bringing it back to town, selling my loot, and doing it again, right? The players decide that loop. I, as the game designer, did not force that on them. I made it available. You can do that. But another group playing the exact same rules in the exact same game system, in the exact same setting, can say, I want to have a conquest. I want to have mass combat. I'm going to go assassinate a king, and I'm going to go, blackmail this other king and this other baron over here, and I'm going to, do all this political maneuvering in order to get myself, a throne, a seat, a barony, a county, etc. I'll be a count, I'll be a baron, and then I'm going to take the armies and I'm going to muster them out to fight others. And so their gameplay loop is assassinate someone, sabotage supply lines, have mass combat, have a siege, and then take over. And then they do that again and again and again. The exact same rules, the exact same setting, right? And you can have a monster hunter gameplay loop where, we go out and we research the monsters, we gather poisons and supplies, we hunt the monster through the wilderness, we find his lair, we set up a trap, we kill the monster, we skin it, we harvest it, and then we take it back to town and sell it, use the monster parts to make better gear, and do it all over again, right? That's a different gameplay loop. You can have lots of different gameplay loops. We intend to provide you with a bunch of different gameplay loops, but this is not a game. This is 72 games. There are a whole bunch of games. This is what I call a game system. This is a system which you can use to play many games. But this is not just one game, right? This was, that's the whole beauty of tabletop. It's not just one game. It is a game system, right? So that is my, elevator pitch. That's what any so-called RPG should be about. It shouldn't just be about one thing. If you have a so-called RPG that's about one thing, I would challenge whether that thing is an RPG at all. Okay, the whole beauty of an RPG is that you can do anything you want, right? I think it's a video game term to just say, my game's about one thing. I find that boring. If I just play Blades in the Dark and I was only doing heists over and over and over again, it's like, well, where's the player freedom? What if I want to go kill the king? What if I want to adventure outward? What if I want to actually explore the world? Sorry, you can't do that. You're only allowed to do what the game says. It's like, well, then this isn't an RPG. I don't have true freedom, right? That's my opinion on it. I want you to have complete freedom. But the elevator pitch for the setting, what I call grand fantasy. Immersive, planar, grand fantasy. So what that means is immersive first. I want it to feel totally real, immersive, believable. Not real in the sense that it's like real life, but real in the sense of consistent, stable, like a brick wall, right? No hand waving, well, that doesn't make sense. I want it to be completely consistent, a la Alexander McCrease and Acts 2, right? Completely consistent everywhere. And then this new genre that I think I've come up with, this is at least my own name for it, is called grand fantasy. Grand fantasy is when it's recapturing the childlike sense of wonder. Because as children, we did not know how the world worked, and thus we were in awe. The world was wonderful. Christmas trees and the road and cars and where did that cake come from? And everything in the world was just fantastic and wonderful. Like, we all love our childhood. I mean, well, in one extent or another. We all like that childlike sense of wonder. And you only get a childlike sense of wonder when you're wondering about things. When you grow up and you know how everything works, you lose your childlike sense of wonder. I want to give it back to you. So that's why we call this genre grand fantasy, where the world is so different that you have to rediscover how everything works. You have to rediscover how the sun rises and sets, how gravity works, how everything in this setting works. It's totally different, right? The world has blood vessels and arteries and bones and the different elemental scapes and multiple moons. And, the center of the planet has a black hole that sometimes turns into a white hole and expands the planet out and contracts it in. So it's almost like it's breathing. And then you have a white hole in the center of a planet, way north of you, and a black hole in the center of the other planet south of you. And so what goes into the black hole planet, like it's always sucking in, bits of its planet's crust, right? So it goes into the black hole and comes out of the white hole. So the white hole planet is constantly expanding. And as it expands so much that it gets out of the gravitational pull, it starts to float off through the air toward the black hole planet. And then it lands on, as the black hole planet is shrinking and shrinking, bits and pieces from the white hole planet come and attach onto it. So it's this ever-feeding cycle of going into each other. But the planet in the middle between those two is the planet that you're on, right? And so you see these planetary pieces flying overhead, and sometimes you can, get on your spaceships and go fly to them. Sometimes they land on the planet. Sometimes they get so close that gravity starts to pull everyone up. And also, the northern planet is pretty much a celestial planet, and the black hole planet is, essentially an umbral, fiendish, evil planet. So you have all these celestials hanging out on this planet as it flies by, and so they can jump off, and there can be interactions, stuff where you've never thought of before. You're like, that's fantastic, that's amazing, what's going on? This is just itty bitty, tip of the iceberg, right? The moon is hollow, and there's gravity and teleportation. I've only talked about gravity and teleportation. There's magical weather where the actual, the snow and the rain and the wind and the sunlight cast spells. I was tired of human beings being the only spellcasters. I was like, no, the trees cast spells, the weather cast spells, time cast spells. Everything in the world is a spellcaster. That means the GM has full authority in any scenario, whether it's an exploration or a combat scenario, right? To just make any spell effect happen. Where, you started combat? Great. Everyone has long strata. You all move at double speed. Everyone can cast Fireball once in this combat. Everyone is blind in this. Or you're blind every other round because the blindness, deafness spell was cast on you. Or any number of things. You can say, everyone has low gravity. Everyone is, etc. Or even the world itself just casts spells. Where it's like, look, this round is starting to heat up. Next round, it's going to explode into Fireball. It's like, grab the enemy, throw him in there. The enemy's trying to push us in there. Actual objectives in combat where you're trying to use the natural spells that are being cast in the world. That kind of stuff. Where the world this is more fantastic than you've ever seen. This is totally different. This is completely amazing. That's what I'm going for. Grand fantasy. Where this is not just Earth with a few fantasy creatures, right? That's what Tolkien's Middle Earth is. It's just Earth with fantasy creatures. But it is not a fantasy world. I want to make a fantasy world. The world itself is fantastic. You can have totally mundane creatures, but the world is fantastic. Yes, Gonzo, but I think Gonzo is more about nothing makes sense. It's whatever you want. You walk into a room and it's bigger on the inside than the outside, and there are purple giraffes there. That's Gonzo. It doesn't make sense. It's silly, right? This world is not Gonzo. It's not silly. This is what I meant by realism, is that you want it is completely consistent. It runs like clockwork. It runs off math. The reason why the fireball is cast, or the sleep spell is cast, or the gravity changes, is because it's all assigned to very specific elements and weather patterns. And here's this season has these spells, and then this biome like snow and season, you combine this spell and that spell, and so it creates this one. Everything is run off math. It is perfectly consistent. It is not arbitrary. It's not GM fiat. It is completely 100% consistent, right? If you're playing in a group where the players don't necessarily care about it being consistent, then the GM has more authority to, storytell, and they can be like, this spell effect happens, right? They can choose. But by default, everything is on a numbered list where you simply roll the die, this spell effect happens. You roll for your season, you roll for your biome, done, right? We have that in the back of the book currently, actually, where we have, if I can find it, we have magical weather effects. We have your biomes, and your moon phase, so sometimes the moon's phase has effect, and you have your season and weather, right? So I say spring, and I roll a d12 and see what weather there is in spring, and then that's the spell that's cast. And then if they're in the biome, say they're in grasslands, I roll a d6 and see what spell the grasslands cast on them. And, you can roll like a 1 or a 2 on the d12 and nothing happens. So it's not constant spells all the time. But the really cool thing is this, because the world is consistent, and it's not just arbitrary and random, all of this magical stuff, one of the reasons why it's taking me so long to actually make content and bring it out, especially for settings, is because all of this has to be taken into account for the setting. What effects would this have on a town, on a settlement? Fighting creatures from the moon, maybe. That sounds interesting. Moon, people don't use the moon enough, Elf. Okay, so we're okay. With world building, right? How would all of this crazy weather stuff actually affect a city, right? So in Forgotten Realms or Tolkien's Middle Earth, you just have a little city on a hill. Okay, well, in my system, if it's springtime, spring is tied to air is tied to freedom, tied to, anything that increases your speed, your mobility, flight, etc. So in the springtime, there are tornadoes and strong wind and whatnot, and that casts fly spell or haste or long strider or it can teleport you or levitate you, right? The wind increases your freedom one way or another. It can increase your dexterity sufficiently, or it can give you proficiency in pickpocketing for a day or whatnot, right? So anything that has to do with freedom and movement and dexterity and things that you can do, right? And so how would that town react? It's on a hill, it gets hit by wind, and during spring, anytime you walk outside and get hit with a strong breeze, you might be able to fly for the next hour or the next day. It's like, how would that affect world? How, like, you have to consider all the different ways. Like, are all the guards like not wearing weapons and armor because it's too heavy and it would weigh them down, and so the air wouldn't be able to cast the spell on them because they have too much earth, right? Earth is opposite of air. So if you have metal, which is like really dense earth, then this air spell isn't going to work on you, right? Your metal essentially dispels the spell. So now all the guards in the city don't wear armor, and they all want to make sure that they're all able to fly around. The children love to like stand on the rooftop and get hit by the wind and like fly around. And pickpockets and thieves and whatnot, they of course want to be hit with the fly spell so they can fly around and escape and whatnot. So maybe there are laws about, well, if you've ever been caught stealing or doing any crime, you have to wear like an iron bracelet or a collar on your neck to make sure that you can't fly anymore. Or there's like a curfew or like any number of things. There's so much world building. That's one spell, fly. Okay, when it snows, people turn invisible. How does that affect? Does the entire town turn invisible? Yeah, now that town on the hill is gone. Like, from the ground, you look up, you cannot see the town on the hill. It's all been turned invisible. And so you have to have heat, the opposite of water and whatnot, because winter is tied to water. You have to have heat, like torches and whatnot, to dispel the invisibility. So people are walking around with torches and like big bonfires and whatnot in order to melt the snow off the walls so that they can become visible again. How do armies travel? Like, we're going to wage our war in the winter because we're all invisible now, and so we're gonna travel invisibly and get there. Just a million things. There's so much that has to go into it. It's grand fantasy. It's totally crazy, but it's all very consistent, which is kind of the whole point. We want it to be extremely consistent, so that you can actually meaningful, informed choices. You have to have an informed choice, and the world has to be consistent in order for you to actually have true player agency. Anyway, on to the actual task of what we're doing. Notebook 72, we're going to keep writing things and hope that we don't have any more hiccups. If we can find where we left off. One of these days, we'll find it. I didn't think we were that far back. Membranes and layers. Alright, cool. We found it. Man. Alright. Arcane enchantments are called artifice. Perhaps, but I don't think so. Period. I think artifice is specific to the artificer mantle of the arcanist, although that might be the one that can create magic items, so maybe it is, but it just doesn't feel right, period. Food for thought, maybe, we'll see, period. Disappointing human man. We're gonna skip that one. Starship Swaps in Space and Big Event. Don't remember exactly what this was about, but I'm pretty sure we got the idea from watching some kind of space battle in some kind of space movie like Star Wars or something. Oh yeah, I think it was the Helldivers trailer where you have a whole bunch of spaceships in orbit and they are destroyed and they fall to Earth, period. I think that's a really cool idea, a cool visual, with a ton of implications, where you have a bunch of starships or spaceships or even ships in the air or even ships in the water that are all shipwrecked. You can actually, this is a sovereign idea, you can apply this to a bunch of different scenarios and scapes. But anyway, it's really cool to look up for years and see all these starships in the sky with space battles and whatnot, and then they all just fall into the ocean or into the land or up on a mountaintop or in the snow, and they're covered by the snow or any number of things, period. They can even fall and land in the skyscape and get caught by all the planes of force and the sky plants, and so now people are trying to get back up there to get all that cool technology, but then all the avians that are up there have access to it first, and that can start a whole new arms race. That's all very interesting, period. Spider gangs. Someone, I think, said Spider Gang, or I heard it or something. I don't remember exactly what this idea was supposed to be about, but something like either an 8-member gang or I guess people that are adherent to spiders and therefore get spider climb or something. Not sure. Period. More food for thought on this. It can be a lot of different things. Period. Finally caught up. Glad you caught up, man. All right. Explain racial loyalty through animals. We want both stark elves and human-like elves. So this is one we're kind of pleased with. We'll like this. You know how our conception of elves is very particular? ? You have the withered elves, which are all bald and essentially like mannequins, and they aren't really living, and they don't really have flesh. They just kind of have this makeshift flesh, and they don't have blood or anything, period. And you have wood elves, who are more like the Elkin from Outer Wilds, where they are part animal and part plant and whatnot. Of course, they can have more plant and more animal, but they are adherent to the woods and the creatures in the woods. So they can have elk ears and owl fur and whatnot, but also twigs for hair and whatnot. And they are very clearly, they almost look like a dryad, and that's how they maintain their own life, period. Well, we also want elves that look pretty much like humans, just with pointy ears, period. But those clearly aren't elves, period. So I'm thinking that at a certain point in history, after elves have been breeding with humans so long, that there's some kind of group that's essentially cut off from half-elves, and so it's just humans, so that when they finally do interact with half-elves again, they say, oh, look, they have pointy ears, these must be elves, and the half-elves themselves don't really know about their history, because, again, this is thousands of years after true elves started mating with humans and whatnot, so they're like, oh, yeah, I must be an elf. But they're actually just a half-elf, which is why they look, mostly human and just have pointy ears and minor changes, period. So we have half-elves that are called, wood elves and snow elves and all that, but they're really just half-elves, because the full elven version of that is actually much more stark. So we can have both. We can have our cake and eat it too, and then what those people would call half-elves are actually quarter elves, period. Anyway, it's about having all the things at once, and you can have all the world-building ideas you want. You just separate them by location and time. In this era, it's this way. In this era, it's another way. And in this continent, it's one way. In this continent, it's different. It's easy to have everything you want. We have 7,600 years of history. We can fit anything in there. It's really cool. By the way, as a maybe quick side tangent, you know how pretty much every other fantasy world out there of any type really, has a current day, a current year, current era, right? Warhammer, Forgotten Realms, etc. All of them have a present day. We don't. There are 7,000 years of history. You can play in any time. It's actually designed for you to play in any time. We have the super grimdark world is ending apocalypse, humans versus elves. We have grand battles of giants versus dragons, grand battles of humans versus the giants, and humans versus dragons, and humans versus elves. We have super high powered stuff. We have Magitech and mechs like Titanfall. We have the world-ending total apocalypse. We have Wasteland like Fallout 4, where it's, nukes and not really nukes, but like magic and high power, high energy everywhere, but it's Wasteland. It's post-apocalyptic. We have everything, all the different genres, but they're just spread out throughout 7,000 years. So there's no present day. You're not intended to just, pick this one era and just only ever playing that. There's actually... This is like the one-stop shop for fantasy, at least we intend it to be in the next 10 years. This has everything. But again, it's all grand fantasy. It's all stuff you've never seen before. And it has the genre. It scratches the itch, but it's totally different. We like going to the dark side to gain more power. One problem that often comes up in fantasy, or just fiction in general, in stories and whatnot, is that you have the light side and the dark side, like in Star Wars. You have the Force and whatnot, and you have, good magic and bad magic. But there's no real reason why someone would be tempted to go to the dark side, or, consort with demons and evil creatures and whatnot to get more power, because the dark side doesn't ever actually have more power than the light side. They're both equal, period. It would be much more interesting if in Star Wars you saw dark side Force users just, force gripping all the Jedi and throwing them against a wall and force pushing everyone and just being so powerful because their anger and their rage is just giving them so much power. The whole idea is the dark side is a pathway to, greater power. You don't know the power of the dark side, right? But the dark side actually has no more power than the light side. When Anakin and Obi-Wan are fighting, they both go to force push each other, and they're both evenly matched. that's lame. Period. There's no actual incentive to join the dark side in anything, to do evil sorcery or diabolism or anything, because it's just as powerful as the light side. Period. I want the dark side to actually be more powerful than the light side. Very clearly, it costs your soul, or you're being immoral and you have to kill people, and there are a bunch of consequences for it. But we want it to actually be a source of much greater power, so it is actually a temptation. Period. And my phone froze up. Other consequences. But it has to be a source of much more power so it can constitute an actual temptation, period. I'm going to go check on my baby. I'll be back. My baby is alive and well. Alright, so, next. Elves become more human over the ages. This is essentially a follow-up to a previous article about having both Stark and human-like elves, period. Perhaps elves over time, through just being in the material plane and getting more exposure to the waking world, or maybe breeding with humans, although that one's lame because everyone does interbreeding and whatnot, elves become more human-like, so that the elves of old don't really look anything like current elves, which includes withered elves and wood elves and all that. So a late era, like royal era of man, wood elf just has a couple twigs in their hair and maybe a little bit of bark skin and long ears, and that's it. But old school wood elves would be totally like dryads, essentially, which also gives the whole fae, fairy, dryads, old school, ancient times mythic contrast of how the world was back in the day, with everything being more streamlined and tame later in time, period. Give both options to players, period. All right. Thank you all for being here. I like writing down random articles, and it's really cool to have people here. I don't think everyone has introduced themselves yet, but it's really cool to have people here to watch. Okay, homes as bridges, drop-offs, towers. Instead of homes just being the same old boring thing where it's just a house sitting on a flat surface, bridges can act as homes where people are in them and on them and under them and within them and hanging from them, drop-offs where the homes are hanging on ropes or whatnot, or in the side of a cliff, or just right on the edge of a cliff, homes being in towers or under towers, period. You want to defy expectations and rewrite all the basics of what is a house, what is a home, what is a town, all of it, period. Align the incentives of the player and their character. This is a good one. This seems obvious, and I don't know why I even wrote this down, but I guess we had to write it down to make sure it was on there. Period. And their character. You want to align the incentives of the players with their characters, which means in order for the player to get their power and get their cool abilities and level up and progress and all that, they have to actually do the same things that the character would do, period. So if you have a cleric character who, of course, wants more miracles and whatnot, they have to actually go on pilgrimages and donate to the church and heal people without asking for payment, etc., and that's how they level up and get more miracles and canticles and abilities. And therefore, the player, instead of being incentivized to power game, if they actually want more power, they have to actually play like a cleric and be generous and kind and whatnot, because you align the player incentives with the character incentives, period. Something tells me that when we first wrote this article title that we had something else in mind, but we don't remember, so this is what we have for now, period. The presence of the king, by his royal narrative resonance authority, bolsters his troops, period. This is like Sauron going with his army and just knocking a dozen men away, that's because he's a king, he has narrative authority resonance, which bolsters him, period. But the presence of the king on the battlefield also gives actual resonant, thematic, not traumatic, buddy, thematic authority boost to his army and gives them a bonus, period. This is the same kind of bonus that the GM can, not the GM, that the king can pass on to a lieutenant or a general or someone like the PCs and have them go fight in his stead, and their presence can have a lesser effect but still bolster the armies, or he can take his own great power, like Sauron knocking people away, and imbue it into the players so they can actually go into mass combat and do something like Acts 2, where they go in and they're slaying dozens of men. It's because they're acting with the king's ability. So this way you actually have slaying dozens of men in mass combat without that totally wrecking the balance of dungeon crawling or one-on-one encounters or anything else. It's through the power of authority narrative resonance, period. There are a lot of cool ideas in here. We like a lot of things from a lot of other games. And we see a couple of what we consider problems, because we want to have full immersion. We want everything to be consistent and make sense at all times. And there are things we really like in other games, like in Acts 2, Adventure Conquer a King system, Imperial Imprint. They have mass combat rules and whatnot. But even though I haven't played it, I haven't read it, it looks to me like there's some inconsistency between dungeon delving and how much power you have while dungeon delving, and that's somewhat inconsistent with how much power you have in mass combat. In mass combat, you can kill 30 guys as a fighter, right? But is that how it works in dungeon delving? And if it is, then dungeon delving is pretty much over, right? Which, I think Alexander said, yeah, like once you're up there in mass combat, you're not dungeon delving anymore. And, that's a good way to solve it, but I prefer a different way to solve it. I want them to actually still be able to do both. I want you to have full player freedom to be able to do both. And instead of saying your character's now inhumanly powerful, like Achilles, I want to actually have a reason for that. Not just you leveled up. I want to say, no, actually you have this magic that's been given to you by the king, and so now you can actually kill a dozen men for the next 6 hours because you've been given this blessing, right? I want to make it make sense. I want you to know why you have it, but then it expires and you can go back to dungeon delving, and it all makes sense. I want it to be consistent. Humans consider blood elves to be true elves. I don't remember exactly why I wrote this or what I mean by it. Maybe this has to do with the fact that humans are all about blood and reality in the waking world, and so if an elf actually becomes a full blood elf through equal elemental adherence, that means they are essentially a full waking being in the full waking world, and they have their own flesh, and they have actually come into their own, and they are now an actual real true elf, period. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Race where females can't talk. I don't remember exactly what the original inspiration was for this, but seems pretty straightforward, period. Maybe something with a lack of freedom, so maybe status, or actually status is talking, so maybe being overpowered or mystery, or they hide their speech or something, not sure, period. Learn for animals' nature. We were watching some gameplay for some new free-to-play MMO that uses AI called something like Where Winds Meet. And in it, the character was watching a bear do kung fu on a tree, and they learn new moves, period. It's kind of cool to see nature and be able to study nature and learn spells and proficiencies and whatnot out of it, period. We already have the idea that you have tethers and weather casting spells and all sorts of stuff in nature. And of course you have some intelligent awakened animals, and you have all sorts of things all over in nature, and the stars are imbuing onto everyone and everything. So you can learn from the stars, and you can learn from watching the wind go by and realize, oh, wait a minute, that's how you cast a spell. It's that motion that is a double circle and then to the left, comma, etc., comma. So you can have people looking at nature and looking at animals and plants and all sorts of things and gaining proficiency and knowledge, and I don't know about increasing attribute scores, but gaining spells and abilities and all sorts of stuff. I think learning from nature is cool, period. All right. Why bad graphics make better games? First of all, performance, comma. Second of all, something like a seamless world without loading screens, comma. Third of all, because the game is actually easier to see, and you can just more easily sounds fine to me if there's an interesting reason. Yeah, I know. There are lots of things in my world where it's like, that's interesting, but yeah, there's always a reason for everything. Third of all, because the game is actually easier to see and you can more easily interact with the world, like in old PS1 and PS2 games where there was just high contrast between everything, period. Lower graphics usually offer higher contrast, which is just easier to play and interact with, period. And thirdly, lower graphics also invite the player to fill in the blanks and use their own imagination, which makes them an active participant instead of a passive consumer, period. This is why people don't really complain about the world building in Morrowind, it's because it had such low grade graphics that it did not promise that this was an accurate representation of the world, the low grade graphics told you that no, this is an inaccurate representation, you have to fill in the blanks, so when you look at a city that's, only a couple 100 feet wide and has 20 people in it, people didn't really complain that it wasn't realistic because the promise was never made that this is an accurate representation, period. But when you get to something like Skyrim or other games with better graphics, they are promising that this is an accurate representation of the world, so that's when people start criticizing, hey, the land is too small, hey, you don't have enough wheat farms, hey, there aren't enough people, etc., period. Of course, we kind of want both, and we either want to have a super mega large world that's actually fully accurate, like literal 1,200 miles wide, or we want to have a smaller manageable world with bad graphics. And of course we could have both, or we can have really good graphics with a really big world, but that's probably stuff that technology just won't allow for another few years. So in the meantime, we'll probably have lower graphics, probably no better than Skyrim, somewhere between Skyrim and Morrowind, in order to not make a promise we can't fulfill, period. Silhouettes in the distance make mystery in video games. This is a good one. Have you ever noticed that in old Xbox and PS2 video games and even PC games, the game couldn't render all the way out, so you just saw silhouettes in the distance? ? That was actually really interesting because it provided mystery, period. It told you that there was something out there to get, but it did not tell you what it was. And so you were left wondering, you were curious automatically, period. If you show nothing at all and the game just doesn't render at all, then that's not really mystery. It's just the unknown, period. Mystery is enticing. It tells you that you know a little bit and there's something more to know. But it doesn't give you everything, period. The unknown is just completely blank, right? Period. So in our video games, sure, we might have some foggy purple silhouettes in the distance so you can see things and be enticed. But in terms of tabletop, we can just give you rumors. Like, this is the whole point of rumors and a map and first-hand accounts of rangers and guides and travelers and whatnot, where they say, oh yeah, I saw this castle on a hill, and he pulls out a piece of paper and he sketches it and he hands it to the PC. So now the players are holding this piece of paper with this sketch of something on a hill, and that is their purple silhouette in the game distance. Period. Yes, it is very accurate. I am using, so I just use Samsung Notes, but I use Gboard, which is Google's keyboard. When you so the Gboard voice typing is way better than Samsung voice typing, and if you download the voice, the voice files and whatnot, you can do it offline. So it's very quick because it doesn't have to send it to the cloud and send it back. It's all done on the machine offline, and it's gotten very used to me. It's very accurate. Of course, it doesn't get fantasy words like Arcan and Apsildon, but it's very accurate. So now the players are holding this piece of paper with this sketch of something on a hill, and that is their purple silhouette on the in the game distance. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's very accurate. I've never really been dissatisfied with it largely. So yeah, I use Samsung Notes for notes and Gboard for the keyboard, but make sure you download the voice file so that it's very quick. Tips for naval combat and traveling. A race only eats each other. This is one of those weird ideas. We already have the idea that a child drinks milk from their mother's breast. So we already have the idea that your food can be from someone of your own species. But you can have a whole race that essentially just eats each other, period. I'm not sure if it'd be a regenerating body part or if you just simply have more of yourself eaten as you live until you just eventually die. So old people are just smaller and have more chunks out of them, or if they somehow replenish their body, or if there are certain people that you eat from, or just one certain person that you eat from, or if there's a family dynamic. Come on, you can have a whole bunch of different variations on this, period. This could be something like orcs or monsters or something in the world, but something tells me that this isn't some super evil thing, it's sure different from a real world, but in the game world itself, I think this is pretty normal for a certain group, period. Not sure if it's elves or something, but lots of potential here, period. Permanent automatic one-way travel. Yeah, like trains. Like trains. Most of your family gets on the train, you miss the train, you miss it permanently. It's cool to have permanent automatic one-way travel, because then there's a choice and you're going from Act 1 to Act 2 and you're leaving something behind and you're going to a new continent or a new scape, lots of stuff, period. Yeah, Elf, or David rather, if I did not have this voice typing, I would have a lot less written total. This has been absolutely necessary to get all of the ideas we've had. Really, Fury focus being more important. What? See, this is somewhat inaccurate. Also, I slur my words sometimes, so it's sometimes inaccurate. So, I can't really blame it. Really, Fury or focus being more important. Don't know why I said really. What did I mean to say? This happens extremely rarely. Really, Fury / focus being more important. Really. What did I say that sounded like really? Really, Fury / focus being more important. I don't remember exactly what this was about, period. I think the title is mistyped, it says really, Fury / focus, and I think we said something that sounded like really, but wasn't supposed to be, period. Anyway, we can extrapolate, or just brainstorm if we like, period. Fury and focus being mantle features of the brute and possibly the armiger, because it doesn't get armiger. And those being more important, and I'm not sure exactly more important than what or why or anything. I'm not really sure what this was about, period. We'll have to revisit it later, period. So we're going to put a question mark there. People all over are constantly dancing. We were watching the Disney musical Anastasia, and people everywhere were constantly dancing, and it was just a normal thing, period. We like that idea, period. We already have the idea that people are doing a lot of dancing because, of course, the spiral pattern of life in real life is going to be present in our work. So singing and dancing are both narrative and resonant and third pillars, so it's going to be everywhere. So that means that you should have a lot of people constantly singing and dancing as a matter of course, which means you can have the arts, which is our replacement for performance skill, actually be useful in combat and not weird, because everyone is actually doing flourishes and pirouettes and literally dancing in and out of combat, because that's normal in this world, at least for certain people in certain settings, and especially people who are on the land, because the land is tied to status and therefore singing and dancing, period. There we go. Evil person corrupting the place he walks into. This is a cool idea. I don't remember the exact what's it called? Inspiration and source for this, but it seems pretty straightforward, period. You can have some evil entity walk into a tavern or a city or even a church or whatnot and corrupts it, period. Oh yeah, I was watching Anastasia, and the main villain, Rasputin, went to the surface world, and he was in some clock tower, and the screen went and showed the clock tower all bent over, and there was this green eerie glow, and everything was just corrupted and whatnot, period. So it was a normal clock tower, and then an evil undead villain walked inside, and the whole thing corrupted and shifted, period. If you're powerful enough, your energy and your power and whatnot leaks out to the world and corrupts it, period. Which means you can also have celestial good stuff also in influencing the world, and you can even have freedom, power, status, and mystery. So you can have some kind of person, some kind of icon of freedom or something, walk into a room and all the doors and windows open and the doorways get larger and whatnot, and you can have someone of power enter the room and the fire burns brighter and the cutlery and the mugs and everything sprout serrated edges and thorns so that you can use them as power, and all the people's blades get sharper. And you can have a king or someone of great status enter a room and banners appear on the wall, or the ground he's walking on is elevated so to display his status, or someone of mystery walks into a place and it all gets dark so he can walk through more easily, period. Lots of cool natural resonance variations there, period. There's just so much. If you take all these ideas and just put them all into a world, it's there's just like the world building is going to take forever to actually do because there's so many ideas. It's wonderful. I love it. The Lord is generous. Faction like the Enclave. That's cool. We are about halfway done with this notebook. Finishing a journey experience at sunset. There's something kind of cathartic and appropriate about finishing a journey or a quest or a movie or a scene or anything at sunset, period. It's just in our psyche that the day starts with morning and it ends at sunset. So this scene of you have accomplished your goal and defeated evil and whatnot, and now you're all sitting and looking at the sunset, and that is the end, that actually clicks with us better than any other time of day, I think. And so we should use that when ending a campaign or an adventure or whatnot, period. It's a good visual, period. All right, I've always hummed as a kid. When I was a kid, I wondered why people didn't sing more. Yes, singing is good. I like singing all the time. I'm at work pushing carts and I'm singing. Not really like musical, but it seemed like a normal background thing to do to me. Yeah, it's a little much to do singing and dancing. Of course, that's cool. That's grand fantasy. I want that kind of thing. But yeah, singing and dancing, just let it be normal. I was out there walking through the field thinking about the whole idea about dancing and whatnot, and I just started dancing in the field as I was taking a walk, and just, because I felt like it. I have very low inhibitions about things in public. I sing, I dance, I do all sorts of things. Liquid Metal Planet. Don't remember the exact source of this inspiration, but a liquid... Actually, I do remember the exact source of this inspiration. We were watching a video about space and how I think Saturn, or maybe Jupiter's core, the one with the ring around it, was supposed to be liquid metal. Period. It's an interesting idea, period. There was a lot more to that video and stuff that I don't really have a lot of opinions on right now, but a liquid metal core planet is a cool idea, and it can be transmuted or go solid or be pumped out through essentially wells, like arteries, through the rest of the planet. So you have this liquid metal river or lake or estuary, or it shoots up into the sky and turns into mist and rain and clouds. You have these metal clouds in the sky, and it rains down metal like mercury, and then it goes down into the water, and maybe it hardens and makes mountains and hills, and people are having to constantly climb up because the land is constantly growing and growing, period. All sorts of cool ideas with the liquid metal core planet, period. Eat the dead. You are the voice in my head, the only recourse we're left after death. That's an interesting thing to say, the only recourse we're left after death, recourse meaning some kind of way to be saved or to improve or something, improve your circumstances, period. So maybe you can appeal to the blood jaws and not die, or maybe you can get turned into an elf. Or actually, that's very interesting, period. What if when you get eaten by a blood jaw, you actually turn into something else, some kind of minion, so it's your only recourse that you're left after death, so you can just stay dead, or you can be turned into something else, period. Some kind of blood goblin, period. Well, that's interesting, we have the whole idea of goblins and dyers and abominations and strigoi, so maybe this is what strigoi are, maybe it's being eaten by a blood jaw and being turned into that, period. Interesting idea for now, period. Yeah, didn't get strigoi. It said street go I. So it tried its best. Cool. Build characters for the world, not vice versa. Yes. And it supports many types of progression. I don't remember what this was about. Snowing cocaine. Yeah, that's our next article. Snowing cocaine. Wouldn't that be interesting? Don't go outside and breathe, kids. It's snowing cocaine. It's just cocaine coating the ground. Yeah. Interesting ideas. Cocaine bear all over again. And it supports many types of progression. I don't exactly remember what this was supposed to mean, comma. It seems pretty obvious on the surface, comma. You have different paths of progression, and you have different games, therefore different objectives, and you can do them all concurrently, comma. And I guess that's what we meant to say, but that's kind of obvious, and something tells me that we wrote down this article because we had something we wanted to say beyond that, period. Yeah. There are some weird things in Apsildon, a few. Sentient, magical fire into place. Having a certain place like a castle or something where all the fire there is sentient, which means a person like the owner walks in and the fire jumps to all the different candles and whatnot, and it always lights his way, so he never has to have a servant or anyone light things or carry a torch or candles or anything, because the fire just always goes where it's needed, period. And of course it might be able to attack intruders and whatnot, period. Cool idea, period. Sentient fire and water and earth and air, actually, so the air like blows into people or opens and closes the door or tries to deafen a person, or the typical suck air out of their lungs, but that's lame, period. What to stress test in your system? Cool. The royal breasts are a national treasure. Yeah, we have some ideas. Equivalent to finding ammunition in the world. We've been playing Fallout 4, and we really like the feeling of finding ammunition in the world, period. It is a kind of treasure, and it's not just gold or caps, comma. It is a different kind of treasure. It is useful, period. And we like that, comma. It's usable, comma. It's not just, oh great, more ammo, or more gold rather, and it just goes in this one pile of gold, comma. It's specific to different weapons, and it has its own quality, comma. With something like gold, it's just quantity. There aren't different qualities of gold. You can have silver and whatnot, but even then, silver and gold and platinum are just quantity by another name, period. So we like the idea of gaining something that's actually has a qualitative use to it, and is actually, useful to you, and it's essentially treated like treasure, and you can get a lot of different versions of it, period. Something like a bunch of different poisons, or a bunch of different oils, or almost like charges to your enchantments on your weapons, period. Oh yeah, comma, here's an interesting idea, comma, something like a temporary enchantment, period. So you find a little crystal or something about the size of a bullet, and you just stick it on your weapon, and you get fire damage for a minute, or even just that one attack, or just your one round or something, period. So you can essentially use this ammunition and throw more and more crystals into your weapon to get it bolstered with all this extra fire damage, period. I just want you to be able to have this pool of ammunition that you can decide to use for greater effect, because I think that's just a fun thing to do. It's fun to get ammunition and use it and trade it and whatnot, period. Just having your sword that goes on forever is kind of boring, period. And yeah, we already have a degradation system, but I really like ammunition. I like finding it as a type of treasure. Ooh, I found some, fire stones or air stones or lightning stones, etc. Or finding it as loot and making the decision of when to use it and how much. And you can have, bigger bullets and, certain weapons that require, a larger crystal or a smaller one, like you have larger and smaller calibers. You can have all sorts of fun playing around with this, but we really want to have the feeling of having ammunition. And again, like everything, the GM can just not put these items in the world if they don't want to have to deal with it. It's optional complexity, period. Square wooden blocks instead of stocks. We saw a picture in a National Geographic magazine of prisoners, not in stocks, but there was just this giant wooden block about 4 feet wide and a hole in the middle for your head to stick through. And it was just around their neck, period. It was so large and thick and heavy, like double the thickness of our thickest childhood cutting board, comma. And you couldn't really bring your arms out around the side, comma. Your hand would just kind of stick out on the side. comma, so you couldn't really do anything or fight anyone or steal anything, and you could barely walk, and most people just sat down because it was so heavy around their neck, period. That is way better than stocks, period, because they can still be moved, but they actually are being punished because they have to bear something heavy, and it's so much simpler to make than stocks, period. It just felt simple and cool, period. Equivalent to loading screen tips. You know in Skyrim how they can give you lore and gameplay tips, and they can tell you that, oh, there's this Daedric Prince over here, and he's the Daedric Prince of lies and deceit and treachery and whatnot, and you can actually just get information without having to actually search it out, and it enhances the gameplay experience? Question mark. Well, we want to have the equivalent to loading screen tips, period. Rumors are one thing, comma, books are another, but a book you have to go out and read, comma, but rumors and people talking to you, and even dreams where you fall asleep and you dream and you see something, comma, that's kind of what a loading screen is. You dreamt up something and the stars shone their light into your mind and you learned something, period. We absolutely want to have all sorts of things that very slowly drip feed lore and just world building and tell you what the opportunities are in the world without you having to actively seek it out, period. That was one of the things that made Skyrim so easily accessible, comma, is that you did not have to search out all the lore in the world, comma, people walked up and talked to you and gave you a quest and asked you to go to a new town, and in that town you would find a new quest to go to a Daedric shrine and whatnot, comma, but you would also just have loading screens that gave you a ton of information and gave you quest hooks and just told you where to go, and it was very well designed, period. Creatures that are always born as twins. Not sure what race this is. It might be a race and another creature type, but those that are always born as twins, period. How would that affect the culture? Question mark. So many different world building implications of a species or race that is always born as twins, period. And you can have chimeras and manticores and lions and anything that is always born as a twin, and maybe it can even be a certain kind of curse or a location or a certain era or something where everyone or certain races in this era, in this region, were always born as twins, and then that can have long-lasting implications after that curse or magic effect or whatnot wore off, period. Home base for each caster. Reincarnation via the soul. Here's an idea, period. What if players get to actually take their soul, comma, all of their soul shards, comma, and put it into their next character as a form of keeping progression across characters, question mark. It's simple reincarnation, comma, your soul goes into a new character, period. Which means they get to keep the same general motivations and personality and whatnot, which might be very useful when they have lost a character and are trying to continue playing, period. You can also have soul cages or prisoners who have been sentenced to be soul trapped, so their soul has been taken away from them and they're just kept as husks and just fed and whatnot, so that if any good people in the city, comma, like guardsmen and captains and nobles and adventurers in the city's good graces, comma, die, comma, then their soul can go into the husks of one of these criminals whose soul was forfeit, and now you can be alive again, period. And this can be done tyrannically or voluntarily, comma, you can have volunteers who say, hey, I'll keep my soul in me, but if this guy dies, then he can replace my soul. Or if this guy dies, then he can temporarily shove my soul out of me and take over for a while, for, you know, a month or a year, or until his task is done, and then he can go to his afterlife and I'll take my body back over, period. There can be stuff that's voluntary and forced, and it can be a punishment, or you can have some evil necromancer that forces this on everyone, and this is just the way of life, where he never dies because he'll always just jump into a new body because he casts a spell on the city, and anyone who enters the city is automatically soul trapped, and this thing happens to them, period. Lots of world building potential, comma, lots of different ways to make this work, period. Thrones control each region. That's a cool idea. Audio is essential to video game immersion. We were playing Skyrim, and we just turned up the audio, and it was so much more immersive, period. Just hearing the loudness of the modded thunder, and just hearing the footsteps and the wind, and the sound of weapons and armor clanking and whatnot, comma, you really feel like you're there when you can hear it, period. Good audio and loud audio is absolutely essential to video game immersion, comma, which makes me think that we should find some easy to use, non-intrusive way to readily and verily incorporate audio into tabletop, comma, a way that's easy on the GM and not distracting, period. I want to make a video game. I really do. Non-diegetic interfaces, words against TPK, but different types of dragons and giants. What were we thinking when we wrote this? Different types of dragons and giants. We don't remember the exact source of this inspiration, but we're pretty sure that it was pretty simple, period. Dragons that, like hoards and treasures and whatnot, comma, elemental, comma, just different motivations and modes of being and just what a dragon is in the first place, period. You can have those great grand perfection dragons. Yeah, absolutely, Alf. Comma, and then you have essentially wyverns and all sorts of things, period. But that means we want different types of giants too, period. You have your ogres and hill giants and whatnot, but just noble giants and ignoble giants and just a lot of different variety, period. We look at humanoids and we don't think the humanoids, comma, we think elves and dwarves and humans and all sorts of things, period. So when it comes to giants, we shouldn't just think giants, comma, we should have as much variety in giants and dragons as we do across all humanoids, period. Places where different hordes reside. Ooh, this is a cool one, period. We want to have default places where it is likely or almost guaranteed that different hordes reside, period. Orc hordes are always in caves, or always at least 600 feet underground, or dire creatures are always in mountains or a mountain pass, or these other creatures are always in certain ruins of certain cities and whatnot, so they're always in elven ruins. So if you enter an elven ruin and you know there's a horde around, then they're almost guaranteed to be in this elven ruin, period. Lots of information is necessary for the player to have to make informed decisions, period. You have to have things in their default places, and you have to have a default place for things, so that the GM, for one, isn't just lost where, oh great, I have an orc horde, where should it go, comma, you actually tell them, hey, orcs always go in caves, and of course they can break the rule if they want, because it's their game, but you want to actually give them a default so they can actually have a consistent world to play in and build upon, period. 50 complaints against D&D. Hey, that's where I got that idea. We should have a roll for initiative. Yeah, I guess we could. Using intimidation to force a morale check. Normally, a morale check is activated when someone loses half their force or when their leader dies, comma. But you can use an intimidation check in combat to force a morale check, quite possibly, if that is balanced. We should playtest it, period. We're still not sure about solo play, but if we do it, it might require switching between GM and player much more often. Although we might just be a player and use the Oracle to GM for us, or we might just be a GM who is GMing for an NPC, and we aren't really the player in that scenario. I'm really not sure the appeal of solo role-playing, period. We're still looking into that. We're not sure. Engagement, gross and immersion. Automaticity. Emotional engagement, mental imagery. We're going to skip those for now. I don't remember what automaticity... Oh, yeah, integrated melding attention. Yeah, that's a bigger one. I don't have the mental space right now to go through that. What happens when you run out of effort is called exhaustion. Comma. It's a condition, comma. A condition for that attribute, comma. And it's probably just a -5 to the roll instead of subtracting proficiency bonus, because that varies over time and it feels like you're being punished for getting better at the thing. So -5 is probably just good, period. The same -5 penalty as you get from being impaired in that attribute. So it's -10 if you're exhausted and impaired, period. Build to Vegnal out of cuts of meat. Ooh, this is a good idea. Our original vision of the island of Teradef. Yeah, Teradef. Look. Architrave. Look at it. Ain't it beautiful? 2 viewers? It's very delayed. Architrave. Wonderful. All right. Our original vision of the island of Architrave was gotten from looking at a tomahawk ribeye steak. Period. We should build everything in the continent out of various cuts of meat. Period. There's that cut of meat that's in the package that looks like a bunch of overlapping slabs, and there are various cuts of meat that are thicker and thinner and chopped up and all sorts of stuff, period. Those should be our biomes, period. Instead of desert and forest and whatnot, we have the stew meat that's all chopped up. So you get there and the land is this total mess of rocks and whatnot, and you have land that slopes upward and then drops off, and then slopes upward immediately and drops off, and you can have skirt steaks and really flat ground and all sorts of things. And yes, you can also incorporate deserts and all the other things, but you want it to be fantastic and grand fantasy, period. Fit for a king band. Solo play has to matter. I don't know what that's about. For humans. Guard dogs. We were playing Bioshock and we like the idea of plasmids, period. This is very close to something like being a talent vessel, but just artificial, period. We like the idea that you take this genetic modification and now you have extra powers and whatnot, period. So yeah, I guess an artificial way of becoming a talent vessel, but it can also essentially just take up adherence slots, which being a talent vessel also does, but it just takes up adherence or devotion or other slots and gives you special abilities, and it can corrupt you and make you go insane because it can leak out into your mind and start to take over your mind or your body or any number of things, period. Really cool look, period. And we'll see if we can do one more. Eating your clothes. Our baby has been eating her sleeves pretty much constantly, and it got us thinking, because we were saying, why are you eating your clothes? You're a human, you don't eat clothes. And then we thought, wait a minute, what if people did eat clothes? And so maybe people essentially carry their food with them and it's on their clothes, or maybe it's clothes first and food second, period. People usually prioritize food, but I like the idea of eating your clothes, not wearing your food, period. Of course, wearing your food is a cool idea, but eating your clothes is just interesting, period. And this ties into mystery and nudity and how much of your clothing do you eat, and are there other cultural implications or personal implications of how much you wear and when you eat it and why? Question mark. Seems like there's lots of potential for world building here, period. Well, I can only write down inspirations for so long before my throat and my mind are kind of tapped out. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. If you have anything else to say, I'm still here to engage with the comments, to talk to you if you have anything at all, because I love talking to people, especially about, fantasy and whatnot. So if you have anything at all to say, I'm still here. Talking with you does not take as much brain power as writing things down. So I'm here for this if you are. But as you are my only viewer, if that's all you want to see and you can click off, then I'll end the stream. But either way, you tell me what you want to do, David. We've been going for an hour and 38 minutes. Looky there. Concurrent viewers. I wonder if the concurrent viewer is just me. I could have you on for a live stream one of these days. You have a channel? Let me look you up real quick. Let me, if I can. Elf Hunter, go to channel. Elf Hunter, 4D Mithras. Ooh, you're into Mithras too? 4D Performance Ethic. Island. Alright. I'm going to watch some of your stuff, buddy. I'm going to watch some of your stuff, and maybe I would love to finally break out of my own little channel and actually get on anyone else's for any sort of live stream. I'm not nearly popular enough to get on, Crispy or anything, but I'd love to. So yeah, we'll see if we can make it work. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching. Thank you for being here and helping me, actually write stuff down. I really enjoy this. It's a lot of fun. I want to do this every week. I just feel like I would annoy everyone. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Totally worth it. You have a good night. God bless. Goodbye. Dun, 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 dun.